enthusiastic crowd of supporters, quote, "The piratical imperialist war is the beginning of a civil war throughout Europe. The worldwide socialist revolution has already dawned. Germany is seething. Any day now, the whole of European capitalism may crash. Sailors, comrades, we have to fight for a socialist revolution. To fight until the proletariat wins full victory. Long live the worldwide socialist revolution." End quote. Even Lenin's friends thought this way too optimistic. In fact, at that very moment, the current Russian government power-sharing arrangement was trying to put together an offensive against the Germans, scheduled for July 1st, with an army that was sketchy at best at this point. If you are Russia's provisional government, you are between a rock and a hard place in 1917. You are barely holding on to power. You have strikes, you have unrest, you have all kinds of problems, and now you have Lenin here taking the already kind of extreme Bolsheviks and pushing them into greater extremism. He's calling for three main things that are impossible for the provisional government to really contend with. He's calling for peace, bread, and land. A triple threat of a message that would be effective across much of Europe in 1917. And yet the provisional government owes. It has to prove to the British and the French that it's still a viable partner in this war. They're funneling tons of subsidies to this government. In fact, they need to convince the Germans and the Central Powers of the same fact. But you can't just assume done, and the best way to do that is to launch an attack. The problem is that this army might have been willing to stay and defend Mother Russia's soil, but most of them are not willing to go on the offensive and run into the machine guns and the artillery barrages of the Germans. They may not give a hoot about Bolshevism or communism or any of that, but they understand peace, bread, and land. On July 1st, the Kerensky offensive, as it's sometimes called, the July offensive, led by the great Russian general Brusilov, launches an attack on a wide front against the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians. It becomes a disaster. This is the way historian Peter Hart describes it. After a 2-day bombardment, the second Brusilov offensive attack began with a flourish, with the attack of the Russian 7th and 11th Armies on the southwest front. When the infantry went over the top on 1st July, early results were promising, but then everything started to go wrong. The best and most loyal units had been chosen as the assault troops, while the follow-up and reserve formations were far less committed. Indeed, when it came to moving forwards, many regiments simply refused. The attack petered out in ignominy, and further planned attacks were either cancelled or abandoned. Then a vigorous Austro-Hungarian counteroffensive was launched at Tarnopol in Galicia on 19th July. The Russians broke and retreated in chaos. This disaster triggered the replacement of Brusilov as commander-in-chief by General Kornilov on the 1st of August. The Russian army was falling apart, and such attacks as had been carried out only served to cull the few remaining loyalist units still willing to actively prosecute the war. The vast majority of Russian soldiers were now content to be passive observers at best. Indeed, by the autumn, it was estimated that some 2 million had deserted. End quote. For a while, the German High Command